Podcast City Network.
Welcome. This is the Rip Griffin Show podcast, a baseball podcast for baseball fans of all ages. Now, here's your host, Rip Griffin.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the show. This is episode number 79. Before we get into tonight's episode, just want to remind everybody to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Let us know how we are doing, and you can leave a comment, leave a voicemail, whatever it is that you want to do. Head on over and subscribe to the show. But with that, tonight, I am joined by Mac from Overtime Heroics. Mac, how's it going, man?
It's going good. Thanks for having me on again, Rip.
Absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure having you on the show, having the guys on just to talk some baseball. Getting a little started late tonight, but that's okay. We had some technical difficulties just trying to get things sorted away before we got the show on the road. But a couple of things I wanted to touch on. First of all, you guys have a podcast called the Cheap Seats Chatter. How long have you guys been doing that?
So we started Cheap Seats Chatter, I'm pretty sure, back over the summer. I know the first time I appeared on it was in, I'd like to say, mid-September. We basically just talk baseball, kind of similar to what we do here. But we just talk like all things baseball. We try to record once a week, and it's also fun being on that too.
Oh, it's awesome, man. I just picked it up today, so I was like, holy cow, this is awesome. So I downloaded it, started listening to it. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. Is it Alex, and there was another guy that was on the show?
Joe Bork.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've talked to Alex a couple of times. I think he's in the group chat with Overtime Heroics, but I don't believe I talked to the other guy. So it was great. You guys are going back and forth, some good banter, which was awesome. So definitely check that out. They can find that on all the major podcast platforms as well.
I think it's mainly just on Spotify and Apple. We don't have a YouTube channel. We don't really use video, but you can find us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts.
Cool, man. So definitely, once you're done checking out this show, definitely check out the other y'all show.
Oh, and you can also follow us on Twitter at @OTH_cheap seats.
Okay, awesome. Definitely, I'll put that in the show notes as well. But some things we had on tap for tonight's episode. There was actually in our group chat with OTH, someone had posted something about minor leaguers, and there's a Twitter page called Advocates for Minor Leaguers that these guys are trying to advocate to try to help these guys, get better pay, which is one of the things that a lot of things that we hear about. But I mean, we don't normally hear about it, in the media or in the news. It's more of behind the scenes type issue that these guys aren't getting paid a whole lot. And one of the things that I picked up just recently is that there's a lot of issues going on at the alternative training sites. These guys are being forced to pay for the hotels. They're being forced to pay for their own their food. They're not getting any sort of stipend for meal money like they're supposed to. So these guys don't make a whole lot of money, right? They are trying to get by the best they can and trying to make it to the big leagues. You still there?
Yeah, no, I thought you froze for a second.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm looking like I'm kind of glitchy. So, but what do you think about this? What do you think about these guys, not getting paid a whole lot?
I think it's ridiculous. I mean, this goes from the low minor leagues to AAA. I mean, I think that these guys deserve so much better. I mean, these guys, they work their tails off. They're playing professional sports for a living. And, some people may be like, oh, they're professional athletes. Probably got tons of money. Look at all these guys. Some of them get like millions of dollars right when they get drafted. But clearly these guys, some of them struggle to pay rent even. I mean, these guys, Ty Kelly, who was a career minor leaguer. He got over 1,000 hits in the minors. He finally made the big leagues with the Mets in 2016. He's very vocal on Twitter and on all social media about how rough it was, playing in the minors. It's like, the majors, people get millions of dollars, and yes, they're able to live at least somewhat luxurious lifestyles. But clearly, when you're playing the minors, some people have to work other jobs still, and that was the thing back in like the early 20th century. Yes, people had to work side jobs, but these guys, some of them, I was listening to a podcast recently. It was actually during one of my classes about a guy who he is an Uber driver, and he was talking to one of his passengers, and he was like, they were talking, and it's like, well, I play professional baseball, but I have to drive an Uber just to make more money. I think, this shouldn't be the case. I mean, if they want to work a side job, like go for it, but it shouldn't be the case where they have to just so they're able to, pay rent, like have food, for some people support a family. This shouldn't be the case.
Right. No, I agree 100%. And a lot of these guys, it's almost like if you don't, or should I say, if you're not a first or second round, maybe even possibly a third rounder, because you get that large bonus money, that, it makes it really hard to go through the whole minor league system, because like you mentioned, some guys turn into career minor leaguers, and then some will fast track it, and then they're making it to the big leagues in a couple years. But I think one instance there was, I think Colin McHugh, and his wife had posted like one of his check stubs from the minor leagues, and it was, I mean, bare minimum at least. I mean, these guys make maybe $15,000 a year, which is definitely not a whole lot to live off of, especially when you're trying to raise a family as well. And then on top of that, the living conditions are not that great. You're living in a hotel. You're riding a bus that's probably 20 years old, maybe. I don't know. I mean, this is not Bull Durham or anything like that, but something very similar to that. And I think these guys, I mean, there's a lot of talk that the owners have so much money that they could probably afford to pay these guys a little bit more. And I really think that they can, honestly. I just think that, do you think that maybe the owners are just, penny pinchers?
Honestly, they might be. I don't want to accuse them of being so, but
right.
There are owners who are known to be cheap, and maybe they're just they think of minor leaguers as lesser people. I'm not really sure if that's the case, but it's honest. It's really sad. I mean, I remember in that same podcast I was listening to, I forget the player's name, but he was talking about when he got his first paycheck, and it was like $400. It was like, I don't know, he got like once a month or something, and he was like, no, this can't be right. Like they're missing a digit or something. And then he went through like a friend who's like one of their relatives is like a lawyer or something, and they were straight up like, no, that's how much you're gonna make. And it's sad. And also, like, I've heard about like the travel conditions. I mean,
yeah,
major league teams, they get flown on either private planes or they fly charter. But for the minor leagues, most teams have to take buses everywhere, from what I've heard. I've heard stories about teams doing like 16-hour bus rides to get to games, which that's like, I've never heard of this situation, even maybe in college sports sometimes, but I rarely hear of that situation. The fact that these guys are professional athletes and still have to go through that is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is the 21st century. This isn't the 20th century anymore.
No, you're exactly right. And these guys put their bodies on the line game in and game out. And the rigors of the game, I mean, to be able to have to sit there and go through that long of a bus ride is truly taxing. And I can see why a lot of these players tend to, call it quits after a couple years, because A, obviously the money is just not there, and B, why put your body through all that extra turmoil? Because it makes it harder to play the game. Waking up in the morning when you're sad. I mean, well, you're probably sad because you're not getting paid a whole lot, but you're achy. one of the things that I read, a book by Chipper Jones, that you kind of already have this idea that when you get up in the morning and you can't move and you can't do things, like you used to, then that's probably time to call it quits. And you've lost the love of the game. And that's where a lot of these guys, they don't last very long in the minor leagues. It's not because they don't have the skill set, because obviously they do, because they were drafted and they play professional baseball, but they just, can't sit there and go through all of this, behind the scenes stuff. And the love of the game is lost, and unfortunately that's they have to call their career to quit. And it's sad that these guys have to go through this. I'm a firm believer. I think these guys can probably live off maybe 30 or 40,000 a year. That's depending on what kind of career you get coming out of college. I mean, that's a good starting living wage. It's not minimum wage, but you can still make ends meet. You can still pay your bills, put food on the table for your family, things of that nature. And I think it's fair. I think the owners can afford it. But it's just sad. And when I came across this site on Twitter, I mean, just some of the things that they talk about, it's players having to pay for their own meals and the conditions and all that stuff. It's just unfortunate. And anything we can do here on the show to kind of advocate for minor leaguers, I'm all for it. I'd like to help these guys as best as I can, to try to get them some money, a good pay raise, a good living wage. So I don't know, it's just heartbreaking just to kind of talk about it and just to read this stuff. It's real troubling for.
Yeah. And I remember, I think it was this spring or maybe it was last spring. There's something about how, the Mets, like they'd have their spring training facility in Port St. Lucie, but there was like a part of they like wouldn't let the minor leaguers use the same locker room that the major league guys were using, which is like, well, aren't they part of the organization? Like,
right?
Aren't they part of the team? Shouldn't they get the same access? But I mean, yeah, I would advocate for making this job much more bearable. Like you said, you're going to go through all sorts of pain. I mean, being an athlete, any sport really, it's grueling. And, these guys really do deserve better. I mean, not everyone is, blessed to be drafted in the first round or in the second round where you can get all sorts of money. Like, the top guys, I think, get like $8 million in signing bonus. Like, what about the guys who maybe don't get drafted, or guys who get drafted in the later rounds who aren't as highly touted? Like, they probably, fight tooth and nail just to stay on the roster, just to still have a job, and they get treated just like so poorly. Yeah, that it is really sad to see that that's the case still.
Yeah, I interviewed a former prospect in the New York Yankees organization last summer. He had been drafted. He was supposed to be drafted kind of in the earlier rounds, but kind of fell into the later rounds. He was a 38th round pick by the Yankees back in 2014. And he was a pitcher. So, I mean, a lot of draftees are some are position players, but a lot of teams go really pitcher heavy because of, depth really. And he just kind of went through the rookie ball leagues and then the New York Penn League. And then he kind of just flamed out after that, and it was because of, I mean, he came up with guys like Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez, but he said that the grueling atmosphere of the minor leagues was so tough that it just he couldn't take it anymore. It's not because he flamed out. It's just because there's just so much competition, and the pay wasn't. I think he maybe got like a $250 signing bonus, which is it stings. It makes you kind of cringe a little bit because that's rough. To sit there and to play this game on pennies on the dollar and to get a bonus that will kind of help temporarily. But I would like to kind of start getting into advocating for more minor leaguers to try to get them more pay, more benefits, things like that, things that you need, the necessities that you need to survive now. That's where I think that this is where we need to head, especially in this game, in this sport that we both loved. I know both you and I both are very fans of baseball, and so I think it's just unfortunate that these guys are having to go through this. So, but that's kind of one of the things that I kind of came about in just this past week that I wanted to touch on. But kind of one of the other things I kind of want to change gears just a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on the COVID issue in Major League Baseball, because we're seeing teams like the Twins that had an outbreak of positive test and they had to postpone a couple games. We saw, I believe it was your New York Mets, I think, had to postpone. I think and the Nationals as well. Am I right? I maybe.
It was their opening series. Yeah, it was supposed to be against the Nationals.
Right. So they had positive tests and they had to postpone. But teams like the Astros and the Tigers, they had to play their game even though there was a positive test. So what are your thoughts? Is it based on the severity of the situation, or is it just Major League Baseball wanting to say you can basically, I don't want to put words in Major League Baseball's mouth, but kind of put it in a term that maybe they just aren't too sympathetic to the Astros?
No, I think it really is a case-by-case basis. I remember hearing about the Nationals outbreak the night before opening day was supposed to be played, and it sounded like it was just like, I don't know, one player, we'll see what happens. And then it turned out that it was about, I think it was 5 or something had tested positive.
Okay.
Or 5 were deemed to have been a close. It was like 5 to 7 had been deemed to be close contacts or something like that. And I'm pretty sure the Twins situation was similar. I think, my issue with this whole thing was, I remember when it happened to the Mets and the Mets had to have their opening series postponed. I was not happy with the situation. What I think it is that, they have these taxi squads for a reason. They're these guys who you can call up at any point and bring them right to the roster. I mean, I guess it's a different situation than when a guy gets injured, but if you don't have a certain amount of players, you're supposed to be able to fill them, in my opinion. It's a situation though where clearly it's more than just like 2 people who are affected, then I understand. Like, it makes sense that you aren't able to play your series. But if it's just like a couple people, then I think you should be able to call guys up and play your games. I mean, if you're without your superstar, then sorry, you're without your superstar. But
right.
it really depends on the severity of it. If half your roster has COVID or half your roster needs to quarantine, then I understand why you have to postpone your games. But in reality, I feel like MLB is trying to avoid having so many postponements, because we saw cases like the Marlins last year who basically didn't play for 2 weeks straight. And I think they don't want that to happen again. So, I think if they make teams play, they make teams play. If they don't, and it's clear like a team is badly affected, then I understand why they can't play.
Right. No, that makes 100% sense, because there was a lot of back and forth between a lot of fan bases, claiming, why is this team playing but these guys are not? And I think even Major League Baseball, like you mentioned, came out and said it kind of depends on the severity of the situation. 1 or 2, they can deal with it, but when it gets to a certain amount, like 5, then that's when things have to kind of be taken into consideration as far as the health and safety of all the players. Of course, to me, you got the fans as well that are in the stands. So I can understand that aspect of it. It's just one of those things that was kind of just very interesting, to especially just the banter back and forth. Especially with the Astros situation, they lost a lot of their key players, and it suffered, and it was rough there for a while. A lot of fans were wanting to jump off the bandwagon already, but I can understand why Major League Baseball is doing what they're doing now, because that makes more sense. Especially to start the season, and you brought up the Marlins situation last year. I think the same thing was with the Cardinals as well, where guys were, not to say they weren't doing anything that they weren't supposed to, but at that time it was more of learning about what this pandemic and what everything in this situation, learning from it and what we can do to grow from it and become more educated. And I think we're seeing a little bit better job this season. Not as many postponements, if that's the case. They did bring in the 7-inning doubleheaders, which I think that's kind of great for this situation that we're in, because it'll allow players to still play the game, but can still rest and whatnot and not be so taxed. We're looking for a full season. So it's definitely one of those things that I definitely understand where this is all coming from. So it was just interesting. It was just one of those things that I noticed, and a lot of people were kind of going back and forth. So
I will say, I remember, I think it was last year, the thing with the Cardinals incident, I'm pretty sure was they went out to, if I'm not mistaken, they went out to a club after a game or something, and they ended up having a bunch of positive cases, and they didn't play for a while. I mean, if that's the case and they're being very careless, then I understand why, they honestly, if that's the case, I would make them play as like well, you guys were disregarding protocols and you can't play with your superstars now. Well, play with what you got. That's sort of my thinking. If I'm being honest, I think that is a bigger, I guess I don't know if I want to call it a punishment, but that, in my opinion, might be a bigger punishment than postponing games, because at that point you're being unfair to your opponent, I think, by postponing those games, because they may have done nothing wrong. They might not have any cases, but then they have to play, double headers and stuff. I think that, if you lose 5 or 6 players, but, they went out to clubs, they did what Mike Clevenger and Zach Plesac did last year, then in that case, you might as well just give up. Like, you might as well play your games of what you got. I mean, I don't know what else to say. That's what I think should happen.
Yeah, that's a good, interesting point there. Major League Baseball did come out this season and kind of gave these guys a little bit more leeway and kind of a little less restrictions. They were able to kind of, now that some of them are getting vaccinated and getting their shots, so they're kind of able to kind of have a little bit more freedom. They can go out to restaurants and whatnot, things that they couldn't do last season. They were kind of more confined to their hotels. Their families are allowed to travel with them now, so that kind of definitely helps. I know it's these guys are on the road, 82 games a year, 81 games a year. So there's a lot of traveling involved, and to kind of bring your family along definitely helps kind of make things feel more like home. So I can understand that aspect. So a little bit more freedom that Major League Baseball is giving these players, which is great, but they still need to be cautious and still need to be careful as to, who they're being around, and, the contact tracing. I think, are they still wearing the little GPS monitors that they were wearing in spring training?
I honestly wasn't really aware that they were wearing those. I don't know if they are. Honestly, I think that if they are, I think it's a lot. I mean, if they are getting tracked like that, but in my opinion, as long as they're not like, if they're going out but being like cautious, like not going, if they go out to eat with their family or something, that's like one thing. But they're going out to, if they're going clubbing and stuff, and clearly disregarding, safety protocols, then that's where we run into trouble. And I think that's definitely the biggest area where I think they need the league really needs to be careful with that.
Right, exactly. I think there's still a lot of issues and a lot of things that Major League Baseball is still learning about this whole pandemic thing. And I think rightfully so. They're doing a great job as far as trying to allow these guys to play, get a full season in, try to keep it as normal as possible for these guys because, like I mentioned just a little while ago, it's all about feeling like you're at home and to have your families and to be able to go out. And a lot of these guys like to go out and explore the cities that they're in, play golf, do whatever it is that they do before game time. And to kind of have that kind of sets the mood, gives a different tone for these guys. So Major League Baseball is trying. I will give them that. I am one of those that I do harp on Major League Baseball and how they conduct themselves and how they do things and accountability, all that good stuff. But I think they're trying. You have to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. So I'm not going to crap on them too much on this episode. Later on, if something else happens, I will for sure. But that was just one of those things I just found interesting that, some teams were playing, some were not, but it makes perfect sense now that it all depends on the situation and the severity of the situation. So, but kind of one of the things I kind of want to jump into kind of the last couple of segments that we got here. Actually two kind of key surprises this season so far. First is the Oakland Athletics jumping onto a 11-game win streak. Maybe if we're talking about it, we might jinx it. If A's fans, I apologize. But the A's are, after they started off 1-7, have gone on and won their last 10. So now they're 11-7 now? Or are they 12?
They've won 11 in a row. Actually, they won.
Okay.
They won a really a wacky one yesterday. I believe the score was I think it was 13-12 or 14-13. It was a slugfest against the Twinkies.
And then it was 13-12 was the final score, and it went into 10 innings, and that was on a double error from the Twins that actually allowed the A's to win the game, which was so surprising. But it's just imagine, how they started off in such a slump, but now all of a sudden that they're taking off. So let me ask you this. Do you think this team is a legitimate contender to win the West again this year?
I mean, the AL West isn't a very strong division. That's the thing, is that in that division, you look at what they got right now. The Astros started out hot. They've cooled down. The Rangers are just the Rangers, I don't think, are a very strong team. They aren't very well put together. They're very young. They don't have a lot of pieces. So the Rangers, not so much. The Mariners have sort of got off to a nice start, but again, I don't know. My buddy Alex on the Cheap Seats podcast, he's a Mariners fan. He even admitted that the Mariners are sort of in that pretenders phase right now. The Angels have offense, but they don't really have pitching. The A's, I think, do have a shot to win the West again. I know at the beginning of the season, a lot of us were picking the Astros, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Astros do still win it. But looking up and down this A's team, I mean, they're doing this, while Matt Chapman is hitting 179, he's not really doing much. Sean Murphy's hitting 158 with a 649 OPS. I mean, as a whole, they only have a 718 OPS, and if I'm looking at this right, they scored 90 runs. So, I mean, they're third in the AL in scoring. That's an average of just under 5 runs per game. And their ERA is 4.71, which is 13th in the league. And really, their starting pitching outside of Sean Manaea has been pretty weak.
Right.
I think that, they're definitely a contender, I think. Matt Olson has been tearing the cover off the ball. Jed Lowry, after he got all of 7 at-bats, 7 plate appearances with the Mets and 0 hits over his 2-year contract. He's off to a great start, hitting 323 with a 916 OPS. Marcana's hitting well. The A's, I feel like they haven't even hit their full stride yet. I mean, some of their key guys are underperforming. I think that if the A's get everyone clicking, they 100% can win the division again. It's also, will the rest of the division pick up? We don't know. But I think as of right now, I think the A's have the best shot of winning the division.
They're definitely the surprise so far. Even though we are, 19 games into the season, so we're a little over 3 weeks into the season already, and the slump that they started in, and then all of a sudden they've gotten so hot, winning their last 10 in a row. It's just amazing how they have quickly just done a complete 180. Now, like this is a long season. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon, and it's just a matter of time if these guys can still maintain this intensity and continue this progress. There's a couple of things that have been going around Twitter that I don't know, something about candy corn. Either it's a good luck charm or a bad luck charm. I don't know. But whatever it is that they're doing, if it is candy corn, hey, keep eating it. I know it's not the best, but hey, if it brings you good luck. But one of the other surprises this so far are the New York Yankees. Everybody had pegged these guys to be atop of the division so quick, and it's been a role reversal because the Boston Red Sox are sitting here at 12-7 right now, and the Yankees are sitting at 7-11 in last place. So, is it too quick for Yankees general manager Brian Cashman to kind of kick things in gear and kind of shake up this lineup a little bit? Maybe do a trade here or there.
I mean, it's the New York mindset. As soon as a team starts underperforming, I see this as a Mets fan all the time. As soon as someone starts underperforming, it's hit the panic button. I honestly, I just look at the Yankees, and I thought they were overhyped coming into the season. They're a very talented bunch. Don't get me wrong, but you take a look at their starting rotation. Look, their bullpen has been fantastic this year. Chapman is mowing guys down. Loaizaga, Green, Sessa, and O'Day have all been fantastic. Michael King has been really good when he's been up. Justin Wilson has been battling some injuries, but he's really good. Outside of like Lucas Luque and Nick Nelson, for the most part, their bullpen has been fantastic. Their rotation outside of Garrett Cole has been awful.
Right.
Jordan Montgomery, 4.24, not good. Corey Kluber has really shown signs of age. He's 35, and he's just completely lost all of his velocity on his pitches. Jameson Taillon, again, he's coming off of Tommy John surgery. He's looked kind of rough. His ERA is also at 5.4. And then Domingo Germán, who I'm not really sure how Domingo Germán still has a job. This is a guy who's been suspended for domestic violence in the past and has shown that he just is he's just not a good person. He probably shouldn't be employed, but he's been awful also this year. He got lit up again tonight. Their pitching rotation just isn't it's not going to cut it. And if the Yankees expect to contend, they really are going to need to shake things up because this rotation is not going to cut it. And their offense, Aaron Judge has an 859 OPS. Other than that, out of all their regulars, nobody has an OPS above 750 even. Kyle Higashioka has been getting part-time play. He's doing really well in his part-time play. But everyone else, Sanchez has been struggling. LeMahieu is struggling. said right away that giving a 6-year contract to a guy who's 32 already was a mistake, and he's already off to a kind of an iffy start. Urshela has been iffy. Gleyber Torres and Clint Frazier have both been awful. Stanton keeps striking out. I mean, they're just a mess right now. I think that they definitely need to do something to shake up their lineup, but I'm not really sure what that is. They have a ton of talent. I mean, Luke Voigt is injured right now, but right now I don't know what it's going to take for them to get going. They're struggling outside their bullpen, basically in all aspects of their game.
Yeah, one of the things I heard, this was maybe on MLB radio or something, that Brian Cashman should try to or make a trade with the Colorado Rockies to get Trevor Story and is it John Gray or Sonny Gray?
John Gray?
Is it?
He's on the Rockies.
Okay, I always get those two confused. Whether it's the last name, first name, but anyways, that they should trade. The Yankees should trade Gleyber Torres to the Rockies for Story and Gray. That might shake up this lineup just a little bit to kind of tell these guys that if things don't change, that there's going to be more people are going to be brought in to help boost this team. And that's something that would shake up that lineup. It's the Yankees lineup. It's the Yankees where that, like you mentioned, we always expect them to be at the top every year, especially with the addition of Garrett Cole, because Cole can't do it all himself, and they definitely need to bring in better pitching. Kluber and Taillon, I was scratching my head when they brought those two guys in. One guy had been injured, and Tommy John, of course, he dealt with some health issues, and Kluber barely pitched last season after an injury. So it just did not make sense, and I think we're starting to see that kind of come into play because the Yankees were relatively quiet this offseason because not that they didn't have the money to spend, because they always spend the money. It's just Cashman just didn't want to add or bring in key pieces, and I think we're starting to see the effect of that now, considering that they are 7-11 right now, and they're 4.5 games out of first place behind the first place Boston Red Sox, which are a complete shock. I know, to me, I had these guys pegged towards the bottom part, maybe middle part of the division, and here they are sitting at 12-7 right now and have won the last 6 out of 10. It's definitely a different feel that we're getting out of the American League East right now. It's going to be one of those fun divisions to watch. The Blue Jays really haven't done a whole lot, sitting at 5-5 in their last 10 games, but they're 8-10 right now. But the Yankees, yeah, they were quick to kind of just jump off the bandwagon and just throw the team under the bus, say it's over, 19 games in. But
I mean, I will say one thing though, is that the Yankees, the concern is that, I mean, in the past they've been slow starters. I mean, heck, in 1998 they got off to a slow start, then they ended up winning 114 games and winning another World Series. And that's the other thing, is that the Yankees are off to a slow start, but it's also the Yankees. Like, the Yankees and their fans will complain about Brian Cashman all they want. I mean, look, maybe the Corey Kluber contract, they gave him $13 million for a guy who's barely pitched and is 35 years old. I thought the Taillon trade was fine. It was a nice acquisition, but the Yankee fans are trying to act as if this isn't a team that, since 1995, they have made in the past 26 years, they've made the playoffs 22 times.
Wow.
They haven't had a losing season since, if I'm not mistaken, they haven't had a losing season since 1992. And Yankee fans are out here, some of them are acting as if they live the hardest lives possible. Like, try being a Mets fan. Try being the Cubs waited 108 years. Some Cubs fans, like, there are Cubs fans who never saw their team win a championship. The Red Sox, 1918 to 2004, I've heard stories about, I have, my family has family friends in Boston. I remember hearing about one of them, his, believe it was his dad or maybe it was his grandfather, who was born in 1918 and passed away before the Red Sox won in 2004. Like,
Oh, wow.
Yankee fans, if they go through a little bit of a rough patch, I mean, it's like, well, it's about time almost to the rest of the rest of MLB's fan bases. That's like, all right, it's about time. But, I'm sure they'll eventually get it together and they'll be just fine. I think, though, the Red Sox, of any of the surprise teams atop their division right now, the Red Sox have the best chance, in my opinion. I was saying in the offseason, it's a tough division, but you can never sleep on the Red Sox. 2013, they went from last place to winning the World Series. 2018, they were a strong roster, but not many people were picking them to win the World Series. Now, I think, they have a nice core with Alex Verdugo and Xander Bogaerts and Rafael Devers, who they're all hitting. Christian Vasquez is starting to heat up. They're the only offense in the majors that has over 100 runs. They're at 103 already through 19 games, which is over 5 runs per game. Their pitching rotation is improving. Nathan Eovaldi got Eduardo Rodriguez back. Matt Barnes has been fantastic. Soon they're going to get what's his name? They're going to get Chris Sale back at some point. Right. And we know that when he's healthy, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. I think the Red Sox actually, I think the Red Sox are going to surprise people. I think if there's a team in that East that can steal the division from the Yankees and the Rays, as much, before the season, I said I picked the Blue Jays to make the World Series, but I really think that the Red Sox are going to surprise people. And I would not be surprised if they make the playoffs and, go on a deep postseason run.
It's very well possible that they could, especially if they continue to, keep going on the same track that they're on. I think getting Alex Cora back was a huge boost for this lineup. That whole year last year was obviously, for all these teams, was difficult, but for the Red Sox, having him, sit out that entire season and then to get him back, it's almost like they're. I don't want to call it a honeymoon phase, but it's like, okay, 2018 they win the World Series. They kind of struggled in 2019. 2020 was, we'll kind of chalk that up to whatever we want to call it. It just didn't seem or feel right. But it's like the band's back together. Chris Sale will be back soon, like you mentioned, and they did go out and bring in a couple key pitchers. Garrett Richards was one of those guys, but the Red Sox, I had them down towards the middle of the division, with the Yankees and Rays kind of there at the top, and they're definitely surprising me, that's for sure. But it'll be interesting to see how this fares now come September and October, if this team is still at the top and we're talking about them in the postseason. But one of the things I kind of want to get your thoughts on real quick, and we do have a voicemail. I had some technical difficulties, but we'll still get to that question. Are the Brewers the surprise team in the Central?
The Brewers, I think, are making a statement right now. They are a team who a lot of people were picking the Cardinals to win the division, and after they got Nolan Arenado, and they already were on the upswing. All right, but the Brewers, if they're gonna win the division, it's gonna be because of their pitching, and I don't have enough good things to say about their starting pitching this year. We already knew that Brandon Woodruff was a very talented pitcher. He was an all-star in 2019. And Corbin Burns coming off a very good 2020, in which he finished 6th in the Cy Young voting. He was fantastic, but it was like, a 60-game season. He had an ERA at almost 9 in 2019. I think the Brewers, they really need to get their offense going. That's the thing. Yelich is out. They really don't have much going on the offensive front other than Omar Narvaez. But, man, Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff have been fantastic. Josh Hader has been fantastic. Devin Williams, though, has struggled. So if they're going to make the playoffs and win that division, I think they have a real chance to do that. But they really, really need the rest of the gang to step up. I think that the starting rotation has been arguably the best in baseball. But, you can't just rely on that to win. You can't, the bullpen can't just rely on Josh Hader to pitch every game. When Yelich comes back, they can't rely on Yelich to be the entire offense. I think my biggest critique on them coming into this season was that they were a top-heavy team. And, I think that take still sort of stands right now, but my confidence in them has definitely increased exponentially since the season started. And, man, Corbin Burns might be a top 10 pitcher by the end of the season if he's not already. So I think the Brewers have a good shot. I mean, Burns hasn't even walked the batter yet this season, which is insane. So I think the Brewers, I think, honestly, they might have the best chance to win that division. The Reds have sort of fallen off, and the Cardinals are kind of a mess. So I think the Brewers, honestly, in a weak division, this might be theirs to lose.
It's definitely a surprise to see the Cardinals at the bottom of this division when I had them so high up winning the division. I think a lot of us did. So it's definitely a surprise to see the Brewers at the top, the Cardinals at the bottom. But, like you mentioned, Burns, 40 strikeouts and no walks. That's impressive just to start the season. So it's definitely one of these things. Definitely, of course, the Central can go either way. Honestly, it's not one of the most competitive divisions.
None of the teams are really like that star-studded. Honestly, that's why a lot of people thought once the Cardinals got Arenado, they were the clear favorite. But really, I mean, I don't see a team that's like a clear favorite. Really,
I agree. That's just how the Central is built. And we'll definitely keep an eye on it because it's going to be fun to watch if these teams kind of stay where they're at or if they've kind of flip-flop in their positions within the division. So I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of things that we've noticed. Just, 19 games into the season, a little over 3 weeks, or a little close to over 2 weeks, close to 3 weeks. Hopefully the trend we'll kind of see it's going to be up, it's going to be down. It's just one of those things we'll just find out as the season progresses. But one last thing to kind of close the show out. We did get a voicemail right before the show started, and I was having technical difficulty trying to play the clip. But I'm going to go ahead and just read the voicemail real quick. It comes from Robert. He asked, he goes, I just wanted to know what the panel's take was on Shohei Ohtani this year. And what do you guys think you could be, in a few years down the line? Thanks. So he's asking about Shohei Ohtani now and Shohei Ohtani in the future. So what are your takes on him?
Well, I'm really glad that he asked this question because I personally am a huge Shohei Ohtani fan. As a lot of people may know, I am half Japanese. I go to Japan almost every year to visit my grandmother, and I do get to go to baseball games out there. And when I was I think in 7th grade, I happened to be at a game where the Nippon Ham Fighters were playing, and Shohei Ohtani was playing the outfield that game. He was only 18 at the time, so he's still raw. He wasn't really developed yet, but I am really high on him. I think he's off to a great start this year, offensively, definitely. He's got an OPS up above 1,000 with 5 homers already. He can run fast. He can hit the ball. I'm a little concerned about his pitching, though. He is very, very wild on the mound. He's already walked, if I'm counting that right, 11 batters in 8 2/3 innings. Right. That is a sign that really, really concerns me there. I want him to be a two-way player. I really want him to succeed. But his last start, he goes 4 innings, allows only 1 hit, strikes out 7, but he walked 6 batters in 4 innings. That's the second time he's done that. His first game, he really started falling apart after the 4th inning. I think that, he's doing great for now, but what I want to see is I don't think he's meant to be a starting pitcher. If he wants to keep pitching, I think try it as a reliever. I just think that if he keeps doing starting pitching, it's gonna backfire eventually. And so I think if he wants to keep pitching, great, but maybe try him as like a closer or something. His bat, though, he can really hang with the big boys with the bat, and
Right.
I can't wait to see what he does with that.
Yeah, the exciting part about him was the fact that he could actually do both. He can actually pitch and hit and do it in a game at this level. One of the things that I have a concern with is when you're pitching, you're putting a lot of taxing on your body. It exerts a lot of energy, and of course, the recovery period. That's why guys go every 5 days, is because they need that rest and that recovery to kind of get the arm, kind of. It becomes so fatigued that it needs the rest, and then for him to go out and pitch, 5 or 6 innings, and then come out and hit, and then the next day he's in the lineup as a DH. I just don't see how that can actually be effective in the long term. It's fun to see it now because it's something we haven't seen, especially in this era of baseball. But I just don't think that he can hold up to that for the next, 4 to 5 years, whenever his rookie contract ends. But it's not feasible. I really think that he either needs to stick to hitting or stick to pitching. Now, maybe if he was in the National League, where he can hit and pitch every 5 days, but then you kind of start as a hitter. I think that's where he's most effective as a hitter because of his raw power and his ability to cover the field on defense. Pitching is great to see him light up the radar gun at 100 miles an hour. But it's not feasible. I think he's going to have to pick one or the other, and I really think he's just going to have to stick to just being a hitter. That's where he's going to be most effective, and that's probably where he's going to be maybe garner the most money come free agency for him. That's just my opinion on him. Like I mentioned, it is great to see as far as the two-way dimensional player, but I don't think it'll last.
The other thing is that he doesn't play the field. He is either pitching or he's DHing. I don't know if he was an outfielder when he was in Japan, but he wasn't very good defensively. He runs fast. I mean, I think that, I don't know if that would add value to him if he was a position player, stick him out in the outfield and then you bring him in to pitch later in the game, like as a reliever. But I mean, either he picks one or the other, which I think he should probably pick hitting. He's really good at hitting. He has electric stuff on the mound. I mean, he can throw fast. He's got wicked breaking stuff. That splitter of his is also fantastic. He doesn't have enough command, in my opinion, to keep going as a starting pitcher. And the Angels desperately do need pitching, but when he's averaging over 1 walk per inning, that's not going to be enough to make it in the big leagues. So right. He's got an electric arm. I think definitely if he wants to stick around as a reliever, he can. But for now, his bat's where he's going to make money. Every time he makes contact, I feel like he does something impressive. So it'll be really interesting. It'll be really interesting to see where it goes from here because, I mean, he's one of the most exciting players in baseball to watch. He might be one of the most talented players we've ever seen. He's literally the Japanese Babe Ruth. I mean, he can hit and pitch really well.
Absolutely. Well, actually, I'll probably be able to get to see him this weekend. We're going to a game, so I'll be able to see him, live and in person. I don't know if he's pitching. I don't think he is tomorrow. I think Zach Greinke is pitching, but yeah, I'll be able to see him in the flesh and kind of see what kind of dynamic player is. But I got one final question for you: what is it like at a Japanese game versus a American game?
I will say Japanese baseball games are some of the most fun baseball games I've ever been to. It's very, very different from a major league game. You go there and there's sections designated for both teams. They come. It's almost like a college event with like bands and stuff. Players have like their own theme songs that they play throughout the at bats, which are super catchy and super fun. You have like noisemakers, and the stadiums are always sold out. It's mostly indoor stadiums, which it gets very hot in the summer in Japan. So it's a good thing that it is. A lot of stadiums are indoor, but I mean, it's so fun. It's the most fun I've ever had. I mean, you go there, the atmosphere is electric. No matter how bad the team is, fans will fill the stadiums. So it's honestly a ton of fun. You can get a ton of cool food, a lot of cool gear, and you get to hear the bands all game. You get to wave your rally towels. I honestly wish Major League Baseball was more like the NPB, because what they do out there, man, it's always a good time. I mean, I wish that was the case here.
Well, definitely something Major League Baseball needs to look into to kind of bring more fans and more atmosphere, more electricity to the game. So, but Mac, I appreciate you coming on. It's been great having you on, talking some baseball. A lot of interesting things that have been happening, especially behind the scenes with minor league baseball, and hopefully we can try to advocate for those players and try to get paid some more. That's the goal is for minor league players. But I appreciate you coming on this evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure being on here.
I certainly appreciate it, and it's always fun talking baseball with you guys. So, but that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Please remember to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms, Apple, Google, or Spotify. The show is a part of the Podcast City Network. Please be sure to head on over there, check out all the amazing podcasts. And thanks to Robert for sending a voicemail. I apologize for not being be able to get that on the air. But if you have a voicemail and you would like or question, you would like to leave a voicemail, please give us a call at 210-263-3253. That's to do it for this episode, guys. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Rip Griffin Show. Make sure to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms. Follow Rip on Twitter @RipGriffin2.